housing, or perhaps lack of it, always seems to be a talking point here in Aotearoa. And at the beginning of the year, property commentator Ashley Church made a few property market predictions. So here to talk us through those predictions and confirm whether or not he is psychic is property commentator Ashley Church.
Tell about psychic.
Good morning.
G'day, Haley.
So let's just get right into it, shall we? So at the start of this year, you said that loan-to-value rules would be relaxed. What actually happened?
Yeah, so this was based on the premise that at that stage the investor rules were sitting at 35%. You had to have a 35% deposit if you're buying an investment property, and if you were buying a house to own or occupy, then you had to have a 20% deposit. So the prediction was that they would drop the investor rules to restrictions to 30%, and that they would either drop the deposit required for owner-occupied homes to 15%, or there's a thing called a speed limit, which is the amount that the banks are allowed to lend to people who've got less than a 20% deposit, that would be increased. So here we are 12 months later, they have dropped the LVRs for property investors to 30%, and they've increased the speed limit to 20% for owner-occupiers, so that prediction proved to be correct.
Well done. You said there was going to be no crash in property prices, and it looks like you were right there too. Yeah,
and to be honest, that one wasn't particularly difficult. That was probably just a reflection of the way that the cycle works. Lots of people talk up crashes, but they don't generally happen. So what's happened now, 12 months on, is that Auckland prices have pretty much stabilised across the country. The median price for houses is $515,000, which is 1% down on where it was this time last year. So again, tick.
That's not a crash, is it?
No.
You said the government will revisit its housing strategies or targets.
So that's a broader one. That's just sort of this whole pantheon of things around some of the policies of things that the government are doing which are in contradiction to each other. So probably a couple of examples of that. You can't cut back immigration if you need more people to come in and actually build the houses that we require. If you're going to put houses into the market at $650,000 and call them affordable homes, you've actually got to do things that encourage people to buy them. There's a whole range of other stuff in that space. So as predicted, immigration, the government's relaxed its attitude on immigration and is pretty much staying at those same high levels because it needs to. And with respect to those affordable homes, the government's previously had some rules that said if you buy one of them, if there's any capital growth and you sell the property in the first 5 years, you have to give that back to the state. They're now saying that you can retain 70% of that. So again, that and a whole range of other things proved to be correct.
So you said the cost of rents will go up, which has happened,
yeah.
And it's going to become the #1 housing issue.
Yeah, so the #1 thing's probably subjective. I would argue that it is. It depends on where you sit in the market. It's certainly gone up. So rents have gone up, according to IMBI and Stats New Zealand, by $30 per week over the last 12 months, $50 in some parts of the country. The previous decade, they went up by an average of $13 per week.
You said that in Auckland, new home builds will increase, new home builds by owner-occupiers.
Yep.
Has that happened?
That's pretty much exactly what's happened. So there's been quite a dramatic increase both in Auckland and in the rest of the country. There's been a 5.1% increase across the country in construction, 16% in Auckland. And in the, I think it was the August year figures, there was a big increase in consents for Auckland for the next 12 months. So that's happening.
You said property investors would abandon the market. Have they left?
Yeah, so that one's a bit difficult to measure in respect of people actually leaving the market. Lots of anecdotal evidence to suggest that's happening. In terms of empirical evidence, a bit more difficult. But what we do know from the information that's come from Velocity is that the number of people actually investing in the property market in that space has reduced dramatically, something like 40% in terms of property investors, 40% fewer mortgage registrations than there were this time last year. So
out of 7 predictions that you made, one was slightly off the mark. Well, you said longer-term mortgage interest rates were going to go up. That
completely off the mark, not slightly off the mark.
But that's okay, that's 1 and 1. What's going to happen next year?
So a few things. So we're going to come back and have a chat to you in late January with some predictions for next year, 6 or 7, looking forward to 2019. But I think probably in general terms, there's a few things that are we can predict with some certainty. Twyford will continue to get the blame for what's going on in the market and probably won't be responsible for most of it. He'll then blame the previous national government, who also won't have been responsible for most of it. There'll be a lot of people who struggle to get into the market and will find that it's hard yakka to actually get a deposit together and get in. But we live in an amazing, wonderful, fantastic country with an enviable lifestyle, probably the best lifestyle in the world, and as long as there's goodwill to resolve these issues, we'll continue to be able to do so.
Great.
Incidentally, one last prediction.
Sure.
Jack's jersey, which I understand he's going to wear later today and has been wearing each day, will continue to be as ugly next year.
Oh, Ashley,
come on. Just very quickly, we've got the government has announced that it will hold a cannabis referendum in 2020.
Yeah.
What do you think of this? Do you think that this is a good move?
Oh, look, I'm a little bit older. I'm in my 50s, and so I tend to get a bit nervous about this stuff because I tend to see it as a way of rather than actually addressing the real issue, it's a way of getting away from the debilitating effects that some of these things can cause. So I know there's a pretty strong view that there's some medicinal values to cannabis and that this is a good thing. I'm nervous about the speed at which it's been done and the reasons for which it's being done. I'd want to see a little bit more debate on it first before we went through this exercise.
Actually, just because you're older doesn't mean you have to be old-fashioned.
That's true. That is true.
Thank you very much for all of your time this year.
You're very welcome. Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry Christmas.